stopped working when she needed it the most. Emily had lived in this little craftsman house for almost 2 years. She used to love it, the warm light, the narrow hallway, the backyard filled with old pine trees. But lately everything felt colder, as if the house itself was reminding her she was alone again. After weeks of trying to move on from Mark and pretending she was fine, this simple plumbing problem pushed her patience to its limit. She took a deep breath and stepped outside for some fresh air, hoping sunlight might soften the pressure inside her chest. When she walked out to the small shared driveway, she noticed her neighbor, Daniel, leaning on his truck. He lived next door, a quiet young man in his early 30s with steady eyes and an easy charm that came without effort. She had spoken to him only a few times, quick conversations about trash day or packages delivered to the wrong house. Nothing deep, nothing personal, but today, when he saw her standing there with tired looking hands on her hips, he paused what he was doing and walked over. "Everything okay?" he asked. His voice gentle enough that she felt her throat tighten a little. Emily tried to sound casual. "Just a same problem," she said. "I think it hates me." Daniel smiled in a soft, understanding way, not laughing at her frustration but sympathizing with it. "I can take a look if you want," he offered. Her first instinct was to say no. She didn't want to bother him, didn't want to look helpless, but the truth was she didn't have the energy to fight with the pipes anymore. And something about Daniel's calmness made it easy to accept help from him, easier than she expected. "Are you sure?" she asked. "Of course," he said. "It'll take a few minutes." So she led him inside, suddenly aware of the way her house looked, the half-folded laundry on the couch, the carton of juice she forgot to put away, the blanket she had used last night while crying quietly through an old movie. She wasn't proud of any of it, but Daniel didn't judge. He walked in with an easy confidence, glanced once around the kitchen, then dropped to one knee beside the cabinet under the sink. Emily leaned against the counter, trying not to stare but failing. Daniel's sleeves were rolled up, showing strong forearms dusted with sawdust and grease from whatever he had been working on before. He handled the tools with skill, turning valves and checking pipes as if he had done this 1,000 times. Even though he didn't talk much, the silence between them didn't feel awkward. It felt safe, comforting, like someone was finally helping him carry a little weight she had been holding alone as he worked. Emily found herself talking without meaning to. Small things at first, like how the sink clogged last night or how she tried to fix it herself, but then her words drifted toward the break, not in detail, just enough to show that her heart had been heavy for a long time. She caught herself and fell quiet, embarrassed she had said anything. Daniel didn't push, didn't pry, he simply said, "Sometimes things fall apart all at once," and continued adjusting the pipe. Somehow those words made her eyes sting as she turned away, pretending to check her phone so he wouldn't see. The last thing she wanted was to look weak in front of someone who barely knew her. But when she finally looked back at him, Daniel was already watching her with concern, his expression soft but serious. "Emily," he said quietly, "are you okay?" The question hit her harder than she expected. No one had asked her that in weeks. People either avoided the topic or assumed she had already moved on, but Daniel's voice carried clear concern, not pity. "I'm fine," she tried to say, but her voice cracked a little, and that small sound betrayed her. Daniel didn't get closer, didn't touch her, didn't make her feel trapped. Instead he simply waited, giving her space to breathe. His patience made her feel more seen than she had in a long time. Just as she opened her mouth to say something honest for the first time in days, a loud knock echoed from the front door. The sudden noise made her jump. Daniel stood up immediately, wiping his hands on a towel, his protective instincts clearing the way he straightened his posture. Emily's blood ran cold when she heard the voice on the porch call her name. She recognized it instantly. It was Mark. Her heart dropped. All the progress she had made toward healing seemed to crumble in one heartbeat. She hadn't expected to see him again. Definitely not today. Definitely not with Daniel standing in her kitchen. The knock came. Again, sharper this time. Daniel met her eyes, reading the panic in them. "Do you want me to stay?" he asked quietly. She nodded without speaking. She walked slowly to the door, each step heavy. When she opened it, she found Mark standing there with a small box in his hands. He looked tired, restless, like he had been rehearsing this moment. Emily felt a wave of old emotions rush through her, the kind she didn't want anymore. "I found some of your things," Mark said, holding out the box, his tone soft but tense. Emily took it with a polite nod. "Thank you," she said, hoping he would leave, but then his eyes shifted over her shoulder and landed on Daniel, who was standing by the kitchen doorway. Mark's face tightened instantly, jealousy and irritation flashing through his expression. So you already have someone else helping you, he said sharply. Emily felt heat rise to her cheeks. Daniel is just fixing the sink, she replied, but Mark's tone made the air in the room grow warmer and more uncomfortable. Daniel stepped forward, still calm, still quiet, but suddenly standing like someone who wouldn't let disrespect slide. She doesn't owe you explanations, he said, his voice steady but firm enough to cut through the tension. Mark glared, his jaw clenched, but he said nothing more. After a long stare, he finally turned and left, his footsteps echoing angrily across the porch. The moment the door closed, Emily sagged against it. Overwhelmed, Daniel approached and kept respectful distance. You don't have to explain anything to me, he said gently. Those simple words hit her harder than Mark's sharp ones. Her walls cracked all at once, and she began talking, telling Daniel everything she had been holding inside for weeks. The loneliness, the confusion, the long nights where she tried to convince herself she was okay. Daniel listened quietly, without interrupting, without judging, each nod making her feel safer. By the time she finished, she felt drained but lighter, as if skating had released some of the heaviness in her chest. She sat at the counter, breathing slowly, letting the calmness settle. Daniel placed his hand near hers, not touching her skin, just close enough to offer silent comfort. You're not alone, he said quietly. For the first time in weeks, the words didn't feel like a lie, but just then, a faint noise outside broke the calm, something falling hard near the porch. Daniel's head jerked toward the window, his expression tightening. Emily, he said softly, I think someone's out there. The warmth in the kitchen vanished, replaced by a cold shiver running up her spine, as part one closed with a feeling she wasn't expecting. Something far deeper than a broken sink, a jealous ex, or a quiet neighbor, something that was only beginning. The sound outside echoed through Emily's chest like a warning, and for a moment she stood frozen, listening to the quiet that followed. Daniel moved toward the window with careful steps, his posture calm but alert. He looked outside without pulling the curtain too far, trying not to make it obvious. Emily's heart thudded against her ribs, still shaken from seeing Mark and unsure if the noise was just coincidence or something more. When Daniel stepped back, his expression softened a little, but the caution stayed in his eyes. I don't see anyone, he said. But something definitely fell on the porch. Emily wrapped her arms around herself, trying to breathe slowly. The day had already been overwhelming, and she wasn't ready for more surprises. Daniel turned toward her, noticing the way her shoulders trembled. You don't have to check it now, he said gently. We can sit for a minute. Emily nodded, grateful for his presence. They went back inside, where the kitchen light made everything feel a little safer. She sat at the dining table, her fingers tracing the wooden edge. Daniel sat across from her, giving her space but staying close enough to show he wasn't going anywhere. The room felt warmer with him there, not because of anything he did, but because of the steady way he existed. Emily tried to explain what she felt, the shock of seeing Mark again, how unprepared she was for the sudden confrontation. Daniel listened quietly, his calm interest making it easier for her to speak. He always came and went on his own terms, she said in a tired voice. Even now he just appears out of nowhere. Daniel leaned forward slightly. Do you want him to? Emily shook her head quickly. No, I don't. Saying it out loud surprised her, because it was the first time she admitted it clearly. Daniel nodded, accepting her words without judgment. Then you don't need to let him shake up your day, he said, his voice steady in a way that grounded her. For a moment Emily simply watched him, noticing how he made her feel safe without trying too hard. There was something about Daniel that reached inside the quiet places she avoided, places she never showed anyone. He stood up after a moment, not leaving but walking toward the kitchen. Let me finish checking the pipes, he said. It'll give you a minute to breathe. Emily appreciated it more than she expected. She sat quietly while Daniel returned to the sink, the soft sound of metal tools and water running filling the room like background music. Hearing him work made her feel less alone, as if someone was gently stitching the day back together with patience she didn't know she needed. After a few minutes, she finally gathered the strength to stand and check the porch. She opened the door slowly, Daniel turning behind her to watch. On the bottom step lay a cracked photo frame, one she recognized immediately. It was from the box Mark had dropped off earlier, but this one wasn't inside it. She had packed it away weeks ago. Emily picked it up with shaky hands, the picture inside showing her and Mark smiling on a beach during happier days. The frame was cracked across the glass. The image split down the middle. Daniel joined her at the doorway, his brows pulled together. Was it like that before? No, she whispered. It wasn't. landed hard. She placed the broken frame aside and stepped back inside, not wanting to stay in the doorway any longer. Daniel closed the door gently behind them. Back in the kitchen, Emily felt a mix of embarrassment, sadness, and somehow comfort. Daniel noticed how she folded her arms tightly across her chest and stepped a little closer. "Emily," he said softly, "you don't have to carry all this alone." His voice cracked something inside her again. She looked up at him, finding comfort in his steady gaze. "I didn't think today would be this heavy," she admitted, trying to keep her voice from shaking. "Some days hit harder than they should," Daniel said. "But you got through it." She gave a weak smile. "Only because you were here." Daniel looked down for a second, almost shy, but his voice remained warm. "I'm glad I was." He walked back to the sink and tightened the final bolt, letting the water run to test it. Emily stood beside him, watching the water swirl down smoothly, the simple motion giving her a strange sense of peace. "It's fixed," he said with a small smile. She exhaled in relief. "Thank you, really." Daniel wiped his hands with a towel, hesitating before he spoke again. "Emily," he said, "can I ask something?" "Sure," she said carefully, unsure what he was thinking. "When Mark saw me here," he said in a calm but sincere tone, "you looked embarrassed, not because of me, but because you felt caught." Emily's heart tightened at how accurately he read her. "I know it's not my place," Daniel continued, "but do you understand that you don't owe him anything anymore?" Emily blinked, taken aback by the honesty in his voice. She wasn't used to anyone speaking to her like that, with care, but also with clarity. It made her feel held without being touched. "I guess I still feel responsible for how he reacts," she admitted quietly. "You're not," Daniel said, no hesitation in his voice. "His reactions aren't your burden." Something deep inside her loosened at those words, as if she had been tied in knots and he began gently undoing them. For a moment they stood in silence, the kind that didn't feel empty but peaceful. Daniel leaned against the counter, his presence steady. Emily took a deep breath and sat down again, needing to let the moment settle. When she finally spoke, her voice was softer. "I didn't realize how tired I was until you said that." Daniel smiled lightly. "Sometimes we all need someone to remind us we deserve peace." Emily's eyes drifted toward him, and for a moment the room felt like it held a quiet connection neither of them expected, a warmth that grew slowly instead of rushing in all at once. But before that moment could soften even more, a shadow moved past the window, thick but clear enough to catch Daniel's attention. He straightened instantly, stepping closer to the window and looking again without pulling the curtain. "Someone's walking away from the porch," he said in a low voice. Emily's stomach dropped. "Is it Mark?" "I don't know," Daniel said, "but I think you should stay inside for a bit." Emily swallowed hard, fear mixing with frustration. She didn't want her ex pulling strings on her emotions anymore, didn't want old memories to keep breaking into her new moments. Her breath felt heavy, but Daniel rested one hand near her on the table, not touching her, just grounding her with his quiet presence. "You're safe," he said gently. "I'm right here." Something about the way he said it, calm, steady, protective, made her chest warm. She nodded slowly, focusing on his voice instead of the fear twisting inside her. Daniel checked the door again, making sure it was locked, then turned back to Emily. "Do you want to sit in the living room?" he asked, offering her a softer space than a tense kitchen. She nodded, and he walked with her, staying close but not crowding her. They sat on opposite ends of the couch, a safe distance, but the room felt different now, filled with a quiet understanding neither of them expected. When the morning began, Emily looked at Daniel, seeing not just a neighbor, but someone who showed up when she needed stability the most, someone who didn't raise his voice, didn't judge her, didn't make her feel small. And in that quiet moment, she felt something shift inside her. Not love, not yet, but the first soft spark of possibility. Daniel met her gaze and gave a small, hesitant smile. "You're stronger than you think," he said. Emily felt her heart stir, realizing she wanted to believe him, and for the first time in a long time, she felt the beginning of hope. As the sun lowered outside and shadows stretched across the room, Emily understood something clearly. This day wasn't just about a broken sink or a painful encounter with her ex. It was the start of something new, something unexpected, something she wasn't ready for, but something she wanted to explore slowly, carefully, with the man sitting quietly beside her. And neither of them realized the evening was about to change everything even more. As a soft knock sounded again at the front door, Emily Part 2 with tense and emotional cliffhanger. The soft knock at the door tightened the air in the living room. Emily froze, her breath catching in her chest. Daniel rose from the couch slowly, his expression calm but alert. way someone becomes when they feel responsible for another person's safety. Emily watched him move toward the hallway, her heart pounding. She didn't want another confrontation. Not after everything that had already happened. Not after feeling small and shaken by the day. Daniel reached the door but didn't open it right away. He looked back at her, as if asking for her permission. Emily nodded weakly, but her hands trembled on her lap. Daniel turned the lock and opened the door just a few inches, keeping his body angled slightly forward, ready to protect rather than confront. The porch light flickered again, casting sharp lines across the steps, but the person standing there wasn't Mark, it was Mrs. Hayes, the elderly woman from across the street, her small frame almost swallowed by her oversized winter coat. "I'm so sorry to bother you," she said gently, "but I heard something outside your window earlier and wanted to check if you were all right." Relief went through Emily so fast her knees almost gave out. She walked toward the door quickly, her voice soft but grateful. "Thank you, Mrs. Hayes, we're okay." Mrs. Hayes nodded slowly, though her eyes showed worry. "I didn't want to scare you, dear, but I saw a man walking away from your porch about an hour ago," she said. "Did you have a visitor?" Emily and Daniel exchanged a look, both knowing exactly who it had been. But Emily only gave Mrs. Hayes a small, polite smile. "Just someone returning something," Emily said, not wanting to drag the older woman into her emotional mess. Mrs. Hayes nodded, satisfied enough with the answer. "All right then, if you need anything, you can always come by," she said before stepping back into the cold evening. Daniel closed the door gently, locking it again. Emily leaned against the wall, trying to release the tension in her muscles. The fear hadn't fully left, but now she could breathe a little easier. Daniel walked back toward her, stopping close enough to show concern without crowding her. "You okay?" he asked quietly. Emily nodded, though her eyes glistened. "I think so. You don't have to be strong every second," Daniel said, his voice soft. "You've had a long day." She let out a shaky breath, finally allowing her shoulders to relax. Daniel guided her back to the living room, not with his hands but with his presence steady and warm. They sat again, though now the space between them felt different, closer somehow, not because they had moved, but because the day had carved a deeper connection between them. Emily stared at the soft glow from the lamp, letting the room's calm wash over her. "I didn't expect any of this," she said quietly. "I just wanted the sink fixed." Daniel chuckled lightly, the sound soft. "I didn't expect it either," he said. "But I'm glad I was here today." Emily turned her head, meeting his eyes, and for the first time she let herself really look at him. The kindness in his gaze, the quiet strength in his posture, the gentle way he listened without trying to fix her emotions even as he fixed the sink. She felt something warm and new rising inside her. Not rushed, not overwhelming, but steady and hopeful. Daniel seemed to sense her thoughts but didn't push. He simply waited, giving her space to feel whatever she needed to feel. After a long moment, Emily spoke again, her voice soft. "I didn't realize how lonely I've been." Daniel's expression softened. "You don't have to be." Those words lingered in the air, delicate and full of meaning. Emily didn't answer right away. She wasn't ready to promise anything, not after the hurt she carried, but the idea of not being alone, having someone steady like Daniel in her life, made her feel less afraid of tomorrow. The house felt warmer as the night deepened outside, the shadows on. The walls softened, the tension eased from her body. Emily stood slowly and walked toward the kitchen. Daniel followed her with his eyes but didn't move until she asked, "Can you help me put the box away?" He stood up immediately, not because she sounded helpless, but because she asked, and he wanted to show up for her in whatever way she needed. They carried the small box of her old things into the hallway, Emily opening the closet gently, trying not to look at the memories inside it. Daniel noticed the way her hands shook when she placed the cracked photo frame inside. "You don't need to keep that," he said softly. Emily closed her eyes for a moment, then whispered, "Not tonight." Daniel accepted her answer with a quiet nod. They returned to the living room, but Emily stopped halfway, turning toward him. "Why are you being so kind to me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper, not accusing, just genuinely unsure. Daniel held her gaze steadily. "Because everyone deserves someone who shows up when life hurts," he said. "And because you can carry me more than anyone should carry alone." Her throat tightened at the honesty in his voice. "But I barely know you," she whispered. "Sometimes it doesn't take long to understand someone's heart," he replied gently. Emily stood there for a moment, letting those words sink into the cracks inside her. Then she walked past him to sit again on the couch, shifted slightly, turning toward her. I don't want to push anything, he said gently. But if you ever want someone to talk to or sit with or just be quiet with, I'm right next door. Emily's breath hitched, the sincerity in his words making her heart warm in a way she hadn't felt in months. She didn't jump to promises, didn't offer anything too big. She simply nodded, a slow, meaningful gesture. Thank you, she whispered. Daniel's expression softened even more. They sat in silence again. But this time Emily moved just a little closer, not touching him, but enough that their shoulders almost brushed. Daniel noticed but didn't shift. He let her make the space smaller on her terms. After a long moment, Emily looked toward him with a small, shy smile. I'm glad you fixed the sink, she said softly. Daniel smiled back, warm and gentle. Me too. Eventually he stood, knowing she needed rest after the long day. I should let you sleep, he said, though his voice carried a hint of reluctance. Emily stood too, walking him to the door, her steps slow, not wanting the moment to end too quickly. At the door, Daniel turned to her, his voice low. You're stronger than you think, Emily. She felt her heart stir, touched by the way he said her name. Good night, she whispered. Daniel gave her one last soft smile before stepping outside. The cold air rushed past him. Emily closed the door gently, leaning her back against it as a warm breath left her body. The house no longer felt cold or empty. It felt full, safe, hopeful, as if something new had entered with Daniel and settled quietly into her heart. She looked toward the kitchen, the sink fixed and shining under the dim light, and she realized something had shifted inside her too. Something quiet but powerful. It wasn't love yet, not something rushed or reckless, but it was the first spark of something she hadn't felt in a long time, something she had almost forgotten she deserved, the beginning of chance. A feeling she wanted to explore slowly, carefully, with the man who had stepped into her day with kindness instead of judgment. Emily went to bed that night with a softer heart, knowing the day had changed her life in a way she never expected, and that tomorrow held a new kind of